So you heard a little prelude of this from Pam. Last month, Reverend Linda Anderson offered a sermon titled "No Mud, No Lotus." In her sermon, we faced an essential question of the human condition. How do we live with the bad things that happen to us in our lives? These are the events which Shakespeare called the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, events which bring the suffering that Buddha tells us is inseparable from our existence, the events which tormented Job in the Old Testament. So this morning is a follow-up to her service. Today, our members of the congregation will share the strategies we use to live at peace with when these bad things happen to us. Now, often Sunday's first message is a story. So today, let's consider the story of Job. It should not surprise you to learn that Job's sad story is told in the Hebrew Torah and in the Muslim Quran, as well as in the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. Here's how it begins in the Torah. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was sincere and upright, God-fearing and shunning evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. His livestock consisted of 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of cattle, 500 she-donkeys, and the man was greater than all the children of the East. Clearly, a rich and important man in the prime of his life, kind of a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk of his time. Sadly for our hero Job, God gathered his angels and boasted of Job's fidelity. Among these angels was a person that the Torah calls the adversary. The Old Testament translates the Hebrew as Satan. The adversary sneered at God and said, "Of course, Job loves you. You have made him the richest man in the kingdom. But if you take that all away from him, he will curse you to your face." With that challenge, Job delivered his servant Job over to the adversary. So Satan wasted no time. A warring tribe stole all of Job's donkeys and cattle. A firebolt burned up his sheep. That was the fireball.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul?
A mighty wind destroyed his sons and daughters. And when Job learned this, he fell to the ground to pray, saying, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gaveth, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." Satan was not finished with him. He covered Job's body with boils from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Yet Job still would not curse his God. His friends came to comfort him in his suffering. He was in such pain that they sat with him in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. And then Job spoke. He cursed the day of his birth, saying, "Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Or why was I not hidden away in the ground like a stillborn child, like an infant who never saw the light of day?" His friends were not very helpful. Like most of us, they were uncomfortable living in a world where random bad things might happen to good people. They needed explanations for the accidents, the disease, and bad weather that led to Job's suffering. Perhaps, they suggested, he was too proud of his wealth or of his virtue. Perhaps he had forgotten the sinful act that brought on his misfortune. Perhaps he simply needed to pray harder. These explanations did not go over very well with Job. He calls his friends miserable comforters, forgers of lies, physicians of no value. And so Job and his friends went on through most of the book, disputing the fine points of his bad luck and all the reasons he may have brought this on himself. Finally, God grows tired of listening to them argue. He arrives at the scene in a whirlwind to answer their doubts. He asks, "Who is this who gives dark counsel with words without knowledge? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, or shut up the sea with doors, or commanded the morning? Hast thou an arm like God, or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? So this story is not very helpful to understanding the nature of God. Whether you read it in the Torah, the Old Testament, or the Quran, it does not reflect very well on him. He seems like a bit of a bully. After all, the story opens with God boasting about how much God loves and respects him. And then God makes this wager with Satan that destroyed Job's donkeys, sheep, cattle, and all his children, leaving him with boils. And when Job asks for an explanation, God reminds Job he is too small and insignificant to deserve an explanation. But if you read this story as a study of suffering, it may be useful. The arbitrary nature of bad events, whether they be cancer, a heart attack, a stock market crash, your child's despair, or a deer running in front of your car, can be as hard for us to understand as it was for Job and his friends. Perhaps the only explanation is that, in fact, we are not in control of our world. Bad things will happen to us. If we can only accept this, we may find some comfort. May your roots grow deep. May your branches spread far. May you find the world to be a wonderful place and leave it better for those who follow.
We are now at the offering. Thank you, Mark. We support the work of this congregation through the gift of our time, our talents, and our treasure. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of the congregation, keeping the computer running, including worship, religious exploration, and community care and connection. Your generosity is reflected in the ways we are able to show up in our community for justice and service. We'll pass around one basket for this service, and the other baskets in the back are for some of the organizations we support. Our Minister's Discretionary Fund provides support for individuals in need, and our food pantry basket. For those of you on Zoom, you can contribute using PayPal with the link in the chat. You can send a check made out to UUCSF and mailed to our PO box. Be sure to put Sunday offering in the memo line. And during this offertory, we will be listening to Robert Secrist play Prelude in D major by J.S. Bach. Thank you, Robin. Now is the time in a community of shared faith when we share the joys, sorrows, and concerns of our hearts. I will come around with a handheld mic for those in the room, and Mark will light a candle. And then we'll get to those on Zoom and we'll light a candle to you. If you're on the phone, you share by pressing 6.
So now it's time for a meditation. I invite you to come home into your body by sitting back comfortably in your chair, feet flat on the floor, your hands resting in your lap, and your eyes closed for this meditation. Take the time to mindfully breathe in deeply and to let out your breath slowly. Let's do that another time. Breathe in deeply and out slowly. Be present. The quote used for this meditation, written at the top of your order of service, is from Training in Compassion, Zen teachings on the practice of Lojong. Lojong is a Tibetan Buddhist practice of working with short phrases. The quote, "Before we can feel compassion for another, we must embrace our own suffering." Keep breathing in and out. Bring into your mind something that causes you suffering. Gently acknowledge your own suffering by supporting it with your conscious breathing. Deep breaths in, slow breaths out. For this moment, take care of your suffering. Embrace it without judgment by continuing to breathe in and out. Pause and breathe. This practice of acknowledging and embracing your suffering is one path toward understanding. It is an accessible path to feeling compassion and transforming your own suffering into joy and happiness. And now let's stand and sing hymn number 112, Do You Hear? It will be led, I think, by the music we heard recently.
Do you hear, my friend, the place where you stand? Through the sky, through the land. Do you hear? In the heights on the plain, in the sun, in the rain. Do you hear?
Through the roar, through the rush,
Through the crash,
do you hear the hush
of your soul?
Hear the cry, fear was Hear a sigh starting true in your soul, From the place where you stand to the outermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear? Do you hear?
All the dreams, all the days, all the sights, all the bliss, they are yours, mine and theirs. Do you hear?
Do you hear? Do you hear?
Thank you for trying to follow that one. That was a tough one. Now we're in the part where we're going to have, a few of us have thought about no mud, no lotus, and have reflected on Reverend Linda Anderson's talk since July 24th. And I am one of those. I have been through a lot of struggles. A lot of us have. By now, I know that the more I work against my struggles, the harder I fall and the harder it is to get up. Paradoxically, I have learned to work with my struggles. So I have a short example. I have a place where I go near my home that is on the moraine, where I have been jogging in the mornings for almost 15 years. And the road is called Little Noyak Path. I jog through all my struggles to help me manage the anger and the loss of control that I sometimes feel. And I jog for my mental well-being. I break up my run into 6 destinations along my 3.5-mile route, where I think about people and things that encourage me. My first goal on my jog is a red chalice-like banner. It used to be purple. And it always, when I pass by it, it seems to represent you, and sort of, my sense of who I am. That centers me for the rest of my run. I conjure up the rhythm of the ocean waves, and I breathe to that rhythm until I get to the second goal on my jog, way up a hill. It's kind of winding, as you know, the moraine is. And on my second goal is a mailbox shaped like a stag. Sometimes it wears a red bow during the winter holidays, and that represents my husband, Carl. Don't think about it too hard. My third destination is the halfway point, a turnaround driveway that comes around Deerfield, off my road, Little Noyak Path. It comes around and it goes up onto Deerfield Road, and it goes through what used to be a house with the address 1997, which is when our daughter Hillary was born. And when I think of my daughter and others, I admire for taking their struggles and turning them around. So that's my I think about that. My fourth destination on my run is a mailbox shaped like a dog. It's a cute dog, it's beige. And that is my son, who's loyal and kind, as well as my own 2 companionable dogs that are there through thick and thin. In fact, I touched that mailbox every time I go by and one of the legs fell off, but the owner fixed it, so that's good. My 5th destination on my run is an iron butterfly mailbox, like the tattoo on the back of my neck that I got after my mother died. It was a time of metamorphosis. I've been through several of those. And the 6th destination is a mailbox shaped like a pig that sits on the top of the last hill as I'm coming back. And the pig happened to be the Chinese zodiac in 2019, the year I was jogging that hill every day through 6 cancer treatments. And you get superstitious, when you go through things. After I run by all 6 of these destinations, I jump over a painted circle. It's either the left foot or the right foot. I always a game to figure out which path, which cadence and pace I'm doing. It's either the left or the right foot. And it's a reminder of the circle of life, that I'm just part of that circle of life. The remainder of my jog is downhill to a straight stretch until I finally reach my car on New Ground Lane. I pass Tips Road on Cook's Lane. No matter how many struggles I have brought to that hill for the past 15 years, I still love jogging there. In fact, Carl and I ran there this morning. The trees form a sanctuary over the road, and the destination mailboxes mark the passing of time, the stages of life, the healing, the letting go, the reaching of one goal toward another goal. And that's all I'm doing. I am grateful for every footfall and for every breath I take in the here and now. This little 5K run on Little Noyak Path holds my story of how I keep my lotus blooming. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Tip.
Good morning. When Mark asked me to contribute to this service, a follow-up to Reverend Linda Anderson's talk, I automatically said yes, without actually thinking about what I might have to contribute. Mark makes it hard to say no, which is a great gift. My next step was to look up the book, No Mud, No Lotus, by Thich Nhat Hanh, to try to get an idea of the subject. I came up on the following quote, namely, the secret to happiness is to acknowledge and transform suffering, not to run away with it, from it. I realized that I probably should have read the book, because my way of dealing with the pain in my life, both personal and professional, has neither been to transform it nor to run away from it. My experiences are not unique. We have all had pain in our lives. In my case, divorce, professional setbacks, cancer, with the exception of difficulties which I could influence, such as medical ones. My way of dealing with painful experiences has been the brute force approach, to endure them. With time, sometimes a long time, they recede into the long-term, less painful part of one's memory. I don't necessarily endorse this technique, but it is probably part of my upbringing. Those of my generation were brought up not to complain, but to soldier on. I recall a quote from an oral biography of former President Harry S. Truman. He is reputed to have said, "I was brought up in a time where if someone asked how you were, they didn't want to know the answer." He was also from the Midwest. As to the other option, i.e. running away from suffering through drugs or alcohol, I never considered it. That would just bring on more problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Tip. And Carolyn Bistrian is our other congregation speaker about No Mud, No Lotus.
After that last wonderful service, No Mud, No Lotus, I thought I'd share this with you all. Sorry. How about that? How about that? Okay. And I have a vision problem, so I have to hold this up. A wide-brimmed straw hat sits on a misshapen tree trunk by the door, which is open. A gentle dog with a fierce underbite lies on an ancient deck overhung by a tangled mass of wisteria just outside, while black tea brews in a glass jar on the kitchen counter. A cranky ceiling fan complains softly overhead in the empty kitchen, though the wind chime suspended from it is silent. In fact, the whole house is silent. Even the TV has been left on mute, playing and replaying an old family video, a closed loop. Out in the sun-splashed garden surrounded by trees, the other dogs sit patiently by the pool throughout the afternoon. One, the youngest, chews a stick. The woman who has dressed in her best beaded blouse, gold rings, and long paisley skirt floats in the very blue pool, face down, as if looking for her glasses, which have sunk to the bottom. I want to just add, if people would like to discuss this with me, I'm open to discussion, but I believe that sometimes you, in your heart, you have to follow your grief all the way through in order to be able to move on. So there it is.
Thank you, Carolyn. Carl Wittenberg is our next presenter.
I have vision problems too, so I should get stronger glasses. I thought I would call this little essay, Friends, Romans, Countrymen, Lend Me Your Ears, since I often feel like I would benefit from having a new pair. When Pam asked for some words about coping, I had to think hard because I haven't had too much adversity that was interesting enough to share. But sometime in 2008, I was at my workplace and I was under a lot of stress. As I was sitting there, my entire desk started tipping. Given that Long Island does not have major earthquakes, nor was I working the radio room on the Titanic, I realized that something must be wrong with me. Very likely the 2008 financial crisis had nothing to do with the fact that I had suddenly developed BPPV, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, also known as being dizzy. Doctors think it is caused by misplaced crystals of calcium carbonate in the semicircular canals of your ear. At the time, I was pretty upset because I was used to everything being so perfect health-wise. I'm also an anxious person, so coping with bouts of vertigo was not easy for me. My main reaction was to look at my stress levels, lack of exercise, and anxious disposition, and to try to make improvements in an effort to cure dizziness. Pam pointed out that I was working too hard and too long and ignoring my health. I thought that if I made improvements, I could cure my dizziness. I joined the gym at work and started doing lunchtime spin classes and calisthenics. Fortunately, spin class is not a class where you spin around, which would be kind of counterproductive. I sampled a bi-weekly yoga class taught at work by a teacher named Lauren, and I loved it. These days, that yoga class is still going strong and even helped me get through the pandemic. Now, ironically, none of these activities cured my BPPV, but the outcome was good anyway, because these activities helped me to cope with BPPV. I felt better in general, which helped to offset the icky sensations. I learned relaxation and deep breathing exercises in yoga that were incredibly useful for coping with worry or panic, such as paced breathing, which Reverend Kimberly did as a guided meditation just the other day. After 2 or 3 years of BPPV, I visited Great Adventure in New Jersey with my family, and I rode a roller coaster there called Runaway Mine Train. This rusty ride, built in 1974, did the trick, and I walked off the ride with my BPPV gone. But the coping mechanisms I learned stayed with me. More recently, I acquired a new minor ear problem, tinnitus. I've had little bouts of tinnitus for a few seconds or a couple minutes once in a while for most of my adult life. Unfortunately, I attended a Beatles tribute concert at Bay Street Theater a few years ago, whose finale included all band members who had contributed to the concert playing Maxwell's Silver Hammer. The song reached such a crescendo that I had to cover my ears in pain. Whatever little hair cells were having trouble in my inner ear finally gave up at that moment. I came away with a continuous high-pitched ringing in my left ear, which I still have. I get to reuse my old coping methods for this new challenge. Tinnitus is completely harmless, of course, so coping really has everything to do with having the right attitude. Exercise and yoga help me create the right psychological attitude for dealing with this small annoyance. So, are there any volunteer ear donors out here? Talk to me after the service and we'll work something out.
Thank you all for listening. We are at this part in our service with hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love, and rise as you are willing or able.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, oh my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to me gathered round, oh my soul.
You guys are the best. The closing words are from No Mud, No Lotus. Oh, I have to get my prop. Inviting the bell to sound is inviting happiness to enter our bodies and take root there. Every time we hear the sound of the bell, we have the chance to practice mindful breathing, calm our body, and notice our happiness. We can invite all the cells in our body to join us in listening to the bell and allowing the sound of the bell to penetrate into us. If you are visiting for the first time or the 50th time, and you are in agreement with our values, our mission, our UU principles, we hope you find a home here and come again and again. If you're in the meeting house, we have some coffee. You're welcome to stay and talk with Carolyn Bistrian or any of us. If you're joining on Zoom, this room will remain open for a few more minutes after our service concludes for informal conversation. We're going to extinguish this chalice and then hear one more song by Robert Secrist. The words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame. you, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Oh, here.
Thank you. Robert, me, Carol. It's Carol. I'd like to know where we can hear you play. Did you say that again?
The Pridwin, Pridwin.
I can't.
I can text it, I can chat it to you.
You say that again.